You know it as well as we all do that the Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire looks a fake. It's nothing better than a timeout before the hostilities resume, yet both needed it for their own compelling reasons. One can perhaps understand Hezbollah being pushed to the wall, but is Israel also fearing it might not survive? Or are we witnessing the beginning of the end of Israel as we all know? Welcome to this new edition of WiseHeads. I'm your host, Ashish Shukla. The ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel is tenuous at best. They have 60 days to pull out their men and weapons from southern Lebanon, but every day both sides continue to bombard each other. Hezbollah needed this break not because they have been crippled, their leadership, of course, is decimated, but it's a largely loosely strung resistance force highly experienced in guerrilla warfare, toughened over the years, helped these days by some extremely impressive weaponry. Hezbollah needed this break because they didn't want to alienate the local population in southern Lebanon. This population has massively suffered due to disproportionate Israeli bombing and ground operations. Don't get me wrong that Hezbollah has suddenly become unpopular among its own masses. They are still very popular in southern Lebanon, but they didn't want its rivals in Lebanese politics, the Sunni and Maronite groups, to stoke dissatisfaction amongst masses and make a political profit out of it. Israel's reasons were altogether different. In all, there were five trigger points which forced them to come onto the negotiating table with a resistance body they stigmatize as a terrorist organization. Trigger point number one: the relentless Hezbollah bombings, almost from the day Israel struck Gaza after October 7 last year, had struck terror in northern Israel. So unceasing has been this Hezbollah attack that northern Israel is completely unpopulated today. It's a wasteland. So one reason is to create ground for stability for the displaced population to return. Trigger point number two: Israel's army is fatigued after 14 months of war. This is an army which is excellent in waging short and swift wars. But a war of this length is a new, often crushing experience. Regular army is exhausted while the reserves it has requisitioned are not turning up. They need a break, and the ceasefire they hope would provide it. Trigger point number three. Thirdly, Israel's ground invasion didn't make much headway. After weeks, the Israeli armed forces moved only by a few kilometers inside southern Lebanon. The infrastructure it has destroyed is perfect playground for Hezbollah today. Hezbollah's booby traps and mines were killing Israeli soldiers almost daily. Trigger point number four: Hezbollah's stock of weapons has left Israelis shell shocked. So the idea of a ceasefire is to do something as that this supply line of weapons to Hezbollah is disrupted. Almost the very day ceasefire is announced, we hear of rebels attacking the Bashar al-Assad government in Syria. These rebels have long been at the beck and call of Israel and US governments. The plan is to cut the supply route of Iran to Hezbollah in Lebanon, in which the access through Syria is a prime one. Trigger point number five: Israel wants to completely focus in uprooting Hamas and millions of Palestinians from Gaza. A two-front war against Hamas and Hezbollah was stretching them thin. They could now concentrate completely on Hamas, which remained defiant after 14 months of war. These were the compelling reasons for Israel to make a complete flip on its war goals. Only a week before the ceasefire, Israel was promising to raze Beirut to the ground. But Israel wasn't as good as their boast. It has forced a rethink in Tel Aviv. In effecting a ceasefire, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was claiming a victory for his nation. but nobody was believing him. Surveys by mainstream media in Israel show that 61% of Israelis feel they haven't been able to subjugate Hezbollah. They are asking if Israel has won, why are Lebanese returning to their homes with as much glee? Why are they still waving the Hezbollah flag, and why are they still holding aloft the image of assassinated Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah? The truth is, Hezbollah is not going anywhere, even though they haven't linked ceasefire with a just solution for Palestinians in Gaza Strip. It isn't as if Hezbollah has abandoned their cause. They remain steadfast in their determination. Hezbollah has succeeded in making Israelis feel very unsafe within their own land. Surveys suggest that 25% of Israelis would leave the country the moment they could avail the choice. It's a nation living in fear and terror. It's a nation which wants to run away. Israel today finds itself cornered by the Shiite crescent or resistance forces stretching from Houthis to Hezbollah to Hamas to Shia militias in Syria and Iraq. And then there is Iran, which has been trapped in their own lair. The truth is, Israel has nowhere to go. If it scales down its violence, its enemies would converge from all corners. And if it continues to resort to violence, there is no chance it would succeed. Its senseless violence and genocide of thousands and thousands in Gaza today has alienated Israel among the Committee of Nations. Its morale, economy, and army, everything has taken a beating. Its enemies are bleeding them to death with a million cuts. Israel today is fighting a battle for its survival and isn't doing a very good job. What we are witnessing is a defining moment of last 100 years. That's all in today's edition of Wiseheads. This is your host, Ashish Shukla, who now bids you goodbye in the hope there is something good to share next time we meet. Goodbye.